Welcome to Faith and Horses.
Join us each week for a new and inspirational message.
Hi guys, I'm Jay, and it's another Sunday here at Faith and Horses, and I just wanted to put up another vlog, a short message for you guys to maybe meditate on this week. I was out walking Jasmine this morning, and she's kind of the inspiration for the message. You know, Jasmine, if you don't know about her background, you should check out our video about Jasmine. But Jasmine is a Rocky Mountain horse. That's her breeding. You know, she's the first one that I've ever owned. Usually all I've ever had were quarter horses. And when we rescued Jasmine, she was a horse that came off of a ranch down in South Texas on the Mexico-Texas border. And she had injured her back leg and came up lame. They couldn't use her on the ranch anymore. And so they were trying to rehome her, or she was going to have to go to slaughter. And so we found out about Jasmine and made the drive and went and picked her up. And never owning a Rocky Mountain horse before, I did some research, and you know, I found out that the breed is pretty popular amongst endurance racers. And so now every time I look at Jasmine and I see her out in the field, for some reason I always think about endurance. And she constantly reminds me about a passage in Hebrews chapter 12 about endurance racing. So you guys are horse people, and horse people, we like a good race. You know, if you're a thoroughbred person, you like, you know, the big races, the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont, the Preakness. You know, you might have watched the Breeders' Cup that was on TV yesterday. You know, if you're a quarter horse person, you know, the races out in Rio Dosa or Lone Star Park, or barrel racing, pole bending are probably two of the most popular events in rodeo. You know, American Quarter Horse Association's having their championships right now this week up in Oklahoma City, and you know, my girls love to watch the barrel racing and the pole bending, and you know, they like cheering for some of their favorites. You know, they just adore and go nuts for people like, you know, Fallon Taylor, you know, who's a professing Christian. She's very vocal about her faith, and she's just full of joy all the time. She's, you know, she's just such an inspiration to my girls and to so many others, you know. And so, you know, long story short, we as horse people, we appreciate a good race. We appreciate a horse that puts out good effort, and we appreciate people that put out the effort when they're running a race. And so this passage in Hebrews 12, you know, really hits home with me as a horse person. Says, starting in verse 1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us." I like that it says run there, not walk. You know, most kids that come out to our farm here to ride horses, the first thing they want to do, even if they've never ridden a horse before, I get young kids out here all the time, all they want to do is run. And I have to explain to them how dangerous it is, you know, to get on a horse that you're not used to riding and just take off running. But that's what they want to do. It just, somehow it's ingrained in our nature. And, you know, we as Christians, we have a race to run. You know, God says He set a race before us, you know, and it kind of sucks. You didn't get to pick your race. You know, you didn't get to pick your parents that you were born to, or your grandparents. You know, you didn't get to pick the environment, the home where you grew up. You didn't get to pick the town you grew up in. And the one thing we do get to pick, or that we have control over, though, is how we run our race. We control how much we train. We control how much we prepare. We control the effort that we expend. You know, you can start at the starting line of a marathon, and you can say, I'm just going to walk till the end. I don't care what place I come in. Or you're going to run and try to finish the best you can in the standings. So you have control over your effort in this race. Jesus says in Matthew 24:12 through 13, He says to us about this race that we run as His disciples. He says that we're going to be in an environment where sin is rampant everywhere, and the love of people around us will have grown cold. And I think you're seeing that right now. You know, I talked a little bit about in the last message, you know, all the nastiness that's going on with the elections, with the midterms right now in our country. And you see how unloving and just nasty people are, and how they want to destroy others, even innocent people they try to destroy. If it means they get what they want, you know, what their sinful, selfish nature wants. or the candidate that they want to be in office. And we see that everywhere. And Jesus says that even though sin will be rampant and the love of many or the love of most will have grown cold, we still must endure to the end. He says those of us that endure to the end will be saved. So he's telling us as his disciples, he's saying that no matter what environment you're in, no matter what race that you have unwillingly found yourself in, he's saying we have to still run it well. We have to run it with endurance, and we have to persevere until we cross that finish line. You know, several years back, I ran a race with some friends from church. We entered this thing called a Tough Mudder, and it's like a obstacle course / marathon. It's lots of miles, lots of very difficult things you have to endure. It was one of the most miserable things I've ever done in my life. You know, we had to dive into these giant pools of ice water and swim through and dive down underneath these barriers, and we had to climb, I can't tell you how many obstacles, ropes and walls that we had to get ourselves up and over, and it was just, the weather was not great. You know, you're covered in mud, it's just nasty, you're exhausted, and but the one thing I won't forget is how great it felt to cross that finish line. You know, and there was just a huge crowd of people who had already finished the race. You know, they beat us in the race, but that didn't change the fact that the celebration was still there when we crossed the line. It wasn't about where you placed or how many people you beat to the finish line. It wasn't that you got to the finish line. You pushed through your own trials and limitations and conquered all the obstacles, and you got to the finish line. And Jesus is saying you're going to have a lot of obstacles in this life. You're going to have some nasty people around you, and the atmosphere, the environment that you find yourself in, you might not have chosen, but you're there for a reason. So run the race with endurance. And he says also in Matthew, he says that when we run a race as Christians, we're running for an eternal prize, a prize that won't fade or rot or go away. You know, my mom, I'm sure, still has it. She had a box in the attic at her house of just piles of medals and certificates and trophies that I had accumulated as a child doing, you know, academic endeavors and sports endeavors and things like that. Yet I haven't seen those things in years, and I'm sure they're faded, I'm sure they're brittle and cracked and just falling apart, you know. And nobody cares about my awards that I accumulated as a kid, and probably the same goes for you. You know, you probably have some good memories of things that you did or goals that you had set that you met, things that you won when you were a kid, but none of that really matters in the large picture. Nobody cares. You know, just like in horse racing, you probably couldn't tell me who won the Kentucky Derby a few years ago. You know, you probably couldn't tell me who the world barrel racing champion was in, you know, 2012. So we need to have our mind on the race that does count, the race that leads to an eternal prize. And that's what Jesus was talking about when he told us that we must endure and we must have our mind set on winning the appropriate race. So I pray this week that when you wake up in the morning every day, you'll look at your day as if it's a stage in a stage race. You know, because your race has already started. You're already running it, whether you like it or not, as a Christian. But how well you run it is in your control every morning when your feet hit the ground, when you step out of bed. And I pray that you would, tomorrow morning when you wake up, you'd have a different outlook on how you start your day off, that you would start your day off with God as your priority and with your eyes on the appropriate finish line. That promotion at your job doesn't matter. You know, that pay raise doesn't matter. It makes the conditions in the environment a little bit better, but in the end, all that stuff doesn't matter. I pray that you keep your eyes fixated on the appropriate finish line, and that you would allow your faith to grow and be strengthened so that you can cross that line and be perfect when you cross. You know, I was not perfect when I crossed the finish line at that Tough Mudder. I was covered in mud, I had scratches, I was bleeding, I was probably hypothermic. You know, I was not perfect, but I felt perfect when I crossed that line. And I want to set you off this week with one more verse. It comes out of the book of James. It's chapter 1, starts in verse 2. He writes, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. So I pray that your endurance would be perfect. We're never going to be perfect as people. We're never going to do everything right. We're never going to say the appropriate things at all the right times. But one thing we can perfect is our endurance. So let your endurance of faith grow and be perfected every day as you deal with this environment Jesus was telling his disciples about, of rampant sin that is everywhere around you and unloving people that will be around you. Let those trials, let those experiences perfect your endurance, because in our endurance we can be perfect. And I think Jasmine agrees. So God bless. Have a great week. Check out our website, faithandhorses.org. If you have questions, prayer requests, or would like to ask a question, a Bible question, hit us up through our email. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. God bless.
If you want to see more of these videos, please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook.